So, picture this. You've got two giants on the world stage, but they're playing a game with completely different rulebooks. Today, we're going to break down the massive economic clash between the US and China. And believe me, this rivalry is changing pretty much everything. Let's dive in.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? What actually happens when America's whole free market philosophy smacks right into China's state-controlled capitalism? Well, it's not just a little bit of friction. We're talking about a global economic earthquake, and we are all feeling the aftershocks. All right, to really get to the heart of this, you first have to understand the two totally opposing philosophies that are driving everything. On one side, you have the Washington Consensus, and on the other, the challenger, the Beijing Consensus.
Okay, so here's the fundamental split. The US has long championed a model built on open markets, free trade, and a global system where everyone, theoretically, plays by the same rules. China's model, though, it's completely different. It uses the full power of the state. We're talking government subsidies, managed labor, strategic trade, all to push its economy forward. These aren't just slightly different approaches, they are two fundamentally clashing visions for how the world should work.
So what did this huge imbalance between systems actually do? Well, it kicked off one of the biggest migrations of money in modern history. So let's do what they always say. Let's follow the money and figure out where it went, and more importantly, why. You see, capital, well, it's agnostic. It doesn't care about borders or patriotism or politics. It has one mission: find the highest possible return. And for decades, that meant a massive exodus of investment and manufacturing jobs, a flood of money moving from places like the American heartland straight to China's booming factory cities. The logic behind it all was, well, brutally simple. Think about it. A factory in the US, with its higher wages and stronger rules for labor and the environment, just couldn't compete on cost alone with the profit potential in China. That simple, profit-driven math is what fueled this sweeping wave of deindustrialization across America. But, underneath this entire shift, there was a huge gamble, a historic miscalculation that was made when China joined the World Trade Organization back in 2001. The West truly believed that as China's economy opened up, its political system would naturally become more open too. That just never happened. It turned out, instead of the world changing China, China ended up changing the world.
All right, so we've talked about the big picture, the systems, the money. But what about the people? Because behind all these massive economic trends are millions of ordinary people whose lives were completely turned upside down, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse.
These numbers right here tell the story of the American worker over 4 decades. So, productivity, how much stuff the economy was making, it soared by almost 75%. But who got the money? Well, the top 1% saw their incomes just explode. Meanwhile, the middle class basically flatlined, and low-wage workers, they actually saw their real pay go down.
And if you want to see that disconnect in a really stark, visual way, just look at this chart. You have this massive surge in economic productivity right next to basically zero wage growth for the middle class. All the huge gains from a more efficient economy, they just weren't being shared with the average American.
Meanwhile, in China, it was the complete opposite story. Urban wages more than tripled in just 15 years. I mean, this was an economic miracle that lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It was an event totally unprecedented in human history, even if they were starting from a very, very low base. But here's the thing. Neither system created some kind of paradise. In the US, all that economic dislocation helped fuel crises of despair, like the opioid epidemic. And in China, that incredible growth came with a staggering environmental cost. At the end of the day, for the person whose town got hollowed out or whose river got poisoned, the ideology behind it just doesn't matter. Okay, so let's zoom out again. This economic rivalry hasn't just shaken things up for workers at home. It has injected a profound level of instability and risk into the entire global system.
And to really get what's happening on the world stage right now, you have to understand this one key concept: weaponized interdependence. It's this chilling idea that the very economic connections that were supposed to bring the world closer together can actually be turned into coercive weapons.
And make no mistake, both sides are playing this game. The US uses the dollar's global power and its control over high tech to hit rivals with sanctions. China, on the other hand, uses its manufacturing muscle and its near monopoly on critical rare earth minerals to put the squeeze on its partners. The line between economics and national security, it's pretty much gone.
So let's bring this all back home one more time.
to the really deep social and cultural impact this has had in America. Because this story is about so much more than just money. It's about identity. You see, for generations, having a good manufacturing job was more than a paycheck. It was a source of pride, a source of dignity. It was a clear marker of your identity, and it was a reliable path into a stable, middle-class life.
So when those factories started to close, it wasn't just jobs that vanished. Entire communities that were literally built around that shared work and purpose, they began to fall apart. The social fabric that held towns together for decades just started to unravel.
And what you were left with was this really potent, toxic mix of economic insecurity and cultural anxiety. This powerful feeling started to grow that the system was rigged, that the basic promise of the American dream that if you work hard, you'll be rewarded, had been broken.
In that kind of environment, it became the perfect fertile ground for a totally new kind of politics. The rise of populist figures, on both the left and the right, is a direct result of this hollowing out of the middle class and this widespread feeling that the establishment had just left them behind.
Which leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling thought. As these two massive systems continue to clash, and as all those economic connections we built are used more and more as tools of coercion, are we just drifting into a new kind of Cold War? Honestly, that might be the defining question of our time.